Hello guys, welcome back to the new videos of Coding Pie. In this video I am going to show you that how you can import data from Kaggle and transform it into a machine learning web application. And this is project 14 out of 50 plus AI project. Without wasting time, let's get started. And if you are new to our YouTube channel, then please hit like and subscribe button for more upcoming projects. First thing first, what you need to do, just open your browser and search Kaggle. As soon as you click on search, you will redirect to the new page. Then click on first link that appears on display. Next, you have to click on sign in option. After clicking on it, you will redirect to the sign in window. Then here you can sign in with your preferred Gmail account. After clicking on it, you will redirect to your Kaggle profile. And here, as you can see, I am successfully signed in into Kaggle account. Now next, click on profile button, which is at right top corner. Now click on setting option. After clicking on it, you will redirect to the setting page. And here scroll it down to API section. Now click on create new token. As soon as you click on create new token, you will get a new pop-up window. In my case, I already generated a token, then I can click on continue. In your case, whatever permission that it wants, click on yes. And finally, download the kaggle.json file. In kaggle.json file, you will get username along with key. Now click on three lines, which is at left top corner. Now here you can click on dataset and whatever dataset that you want, type in search bar and click on search button. As soon as you click on search, you will get the dataset. Click on the icon of the dataset. After clicking on it, you will redirect to the dataset page. Here, as soon as you click on download button, you will get dataset path as well as download options. And here you don't need to copy the entire data path. You only need to copy down those content which is inside the double quotation mark. Now quickly I used to move on to the next step. Here, as you can see, first I used to install Kaggle API package. In my case, it is already installed, so I can quickly move on to the next step. Next, I used to set up our Kaggle credential. For this, first I used to import OS. This is Python built-in OS module, which provide function for interacting with operating system. It is commonly used for environment variable, file as well as directory operation and other OS related tasks. Now os.env with index Kaggle underscore username. I used to mention my username. This line of code assign the Kaggle username to the environment variable. Again with the usage of os.env with index Kaggle underscore key. Here I used to pass my Kaggle key. Similarly, this line of code will assign Kaggle key to the environment variable. And together these two things are needed to authenticate request to the Kaggle dataset, which I got earlier from kaggle.json file. After running the code, I will quickly move on to the next step. Here I used to import libraries and authentication. And here, as you can see, from kaggle.api.kaggle_API_extended, I used to import Kaggle API. The code will provide a method to interact with Kaggle API. Next, I used to create an instance of Kaggle API class, which named as API, and with the usage of API.authentication method, I used to establish a connection with Kaggle API. Now after running the code, I will quickly move on to the next step where I used to unzip the dataset. For this, first I used to define a variable called dataset where I used to pass data path, which is I copied earlier from Kaggle. Next, with the usage of api.dataset_download_file where I used to pass dataset, path and unzip is equal to true. This line of code will extract dataset file from Kaggle to the current directory of the Google Colab. After running the code, I successfully fetched the data from a particular dataset URL. Quickly, I used to move on to the next step where I used to load the dataset into a Panda data frame. So for this, first I used to import pandas as PD, which is a Python library that is used for data extraction as well as manipulation. Now next I used to define a variable called csv_files. Next, with the usage of os.listdir function, I used to list out all files in a current working directory. Next, with the usage of list comprehension along with conditional statement and loop, I used to filter out CSV file. And whatever list of file that comes after it, it will be stored in csv_file variable. And csv_files with index 0, I used to extract the first CSV file from the current directory. And it will be stored in csv_file variable. Next, I used to take a print of the CSV file with the usage of print function, where I used to pass csv_file inside the curly braces. Next, I used to load data into a data frame. This first I used to define a variable called df. And with the usage of pd.read_csv where I used to pass csv_file. Now next, in order to display all columns clearly, I used to call pd.set_option function where I pass display.max_column with none And with the usage of pd.set_option function where I used to pass display.width, 1000, this line of code will ensure that output will fit under 1000 character. And finally, with the usage of df.head function, I used to print the top 5 rows of the dataset. And finally, here you can see the dataset file name along with their top 5 rows of the dataset. Now quickly I move on to the next step where I used to convert this dataset into a machine learning web application using Gradio. Now here what you need to do, just install all the required libraries which include Gradio, scikit-learn and pandas. Now quickly I move on to the next step where I used to import all the necessary libraries which is required for this project. Now here as you can see I used to import pandas as PD which is used for data manipulation. Now from scikit-learn.model_selection I used to import train_test_split. This is used to prevent data from leakage. Next, from scikit-learn.linear_model I used to import logistic regression. This is machine learning algorithm suitable for binary class classification. Next, from scikit-learn.preprocessing I used to import label encoder. This is used to convert categorical labels into numerical values. And finally I used to import Gradio as GR, which is useful for creating user interface for machine learning model. After running the code I will quickly move on to the next step where I used to prepare dataset for training. Now here as you can see, first I used to drop those rows from feature column which consist missing values. The usage of df.dropNA function where I used to pass subset and assign the feature column which include age, embark and fare. Next again I used to import label encoder from scikit-learn.preprocessing. You don't need to import same thing again and again, here I import intentionally. Now with the usage of label encoder.fit_transform on top of feature column, I used to assign unique integer to each category of the feature column. Now next I used to filter out feature as well as target variable. So for this first I used to define feature as variable. Then I used to pass or feature column inside the list. Then I used to define x as variable which represent feature column, where I used to pass df with index feature. Next I used to define y as target variable where I pass df with index survive as target feature. Now next I used to split the data and train the model with the usage of logistic regression. So for this I used to import logistic regression from scikit-learn.linear_model. Next I used to call logistic regression class where I used to pass maximum iteration, that is 1000. This line of code will set the maximum number of iteration of data upon which logistic regression machine learning algorithm would be trained. Finally it is going to be stored in model variable. Next with the usage of model.fit method where I used to pass x and y, where model will learn pattern between feature variable as well as target variable. Now after running the code, and here as you can see, this code prepare a data, clean missing values, code categorical variables and select features, and finally train a logistic regression model to predict survival. Now quickly I move on to the next step where I used to define prediction function, and here as you can see with the usage of def keyword I used to define a function named as predict_survival where I used to pass number of features. Next with the usage of conditional statement I used to encode some of the features where I used to mention 1 if 6 is female else 0. Then I store it to their corresponding variable. Next I used to encode the embarked feature. For this first I used to define a variable called embarked_map. With the usage of dictionary, I used to assign unique integer to their corresponding categorical features. And finally, I used to assign this encoded feature to the embarked variable. Now quickly, I used to format the input which is required for the model. So for this, I used to define a variable called input_data, where I used to store all the feature column. Next, I used to call model.predict function where I used to pass input_data with index 0. This line of code will give the predicted result which is to be stored in prediction variable. And finally in return statement I used to mention that if prediction value is 1 then return survive, else if prediction value is 0 then return did not survive. Now after running the code I will quickly move on to the next step where I used to create user interface using Gradio. Now here as you can see, first I used to import Gradio as GR, and with the usage of Gradio I used to call interface class which is to be stored in UI variable. And inside a class, first I used to call predict_survival function which is to be stored in fn variable. Next I used to define input which is store list of feature data and based on categorical as well as numerical feature. With the usage of Gradio I used to create slider and radio on canvas. Next I used to define output as variable where I used to pass text. It will create an empty text box for the predicted result. Next I used to define title and description of this project. And finally with the usage of UI.launch function I used to deploy the code on Gradio. Soon as I run the code, I will get the public URL, and after clicking on it, I will redirect to the public user interface. Now finally here, as you can see, the user interface of this project with title Titanic Survival Predictor. Now after filling all the details, click on submit button, and as soon as you click on submit, you will get the predicted result in the output text box. So this is how you can import data from Kaggle and transform it into a machine learning web application. I hope this video is informative. Please do like, share and subscribe for more upcoming projects.